We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Jay Helms of W2 Capitalist, which I love the name, Jay. Man, that is killer.
Thank you, Casey.
Because that's exactly what we're trying to do is take that W-2 job and kick it out the back door and give people the financial freedom that real estate provides. So, Jay, how are you today?
I can't complain, man. We're in Wilmington, North Carolina this week, and we just got back from the beach. So I'm excited. We're having a good time. So I burn easy, so I put on a lot of sunscreen before I go out there. But I can't complain.
Well, good, man. That's great. And I had a guy tell me one time, he said it wouldn't do any good if I complained anyway. So let's just keep rolling, right?
That's the
I'm
advice
gonna
my high
change my
school.
circumstances for the day.
Yeah.
So let's rock and roll. So, all right, man. Well, listen, W2 Capitalist, like I said, that's our main goal. I love the fact that you focus on helping people get that first syndication put together, get it done, and push forward. And as you and I were just sitting here talking, the lack of deals right now is really kind of, I think, got a lot of people not necessarily maybe on the sidelines of actually going through with something, but on the sidelines of saying, like I said, the last thing somebody wants to do, they go in their first syndication, and the last thing they want to have to do or have the prospect of doing or the thought of doing is making a capital call after you've gone to all the trouble to buy an asset, raise the capital, blah, 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 blah. Yep. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and then we'll kind of just roll on from there.
Yeah. So the way the W2 Capitalist was born and kind of but it's really my wife and I's real estate investing career is I was a principal of a startup technology company. And after it was longer than that. It was quite a while of growing that company. We got acquired by a much larger organization. And at that moment when that acquisition, I mean, it was going down the street when the wheels were coming off the car. I mean, it was nuts. Clients were leaving. It was just bonkers. I realized that the wealth that I wanted to generate for my family, it was not going to happen with just a W-2 alone. Right. So we started exploring, what does real estate investing mean? And I'll try not to hit the mic again. But what does that mean? How can we get involved in it? There's so many different ways. And we started with that single family, it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath single family house that we bought for $22,000. Right. And we put $9,000 into it. It was a foreclosure, put $9,000 into it, rented it straight up right when it was ready. 3 years later, we sold it for $50,000. And so now a lot of that was timing of the market that we didn't know. Well, we didn't know at the time, but the thing is, and kind of what I think we're going to talk about today is we got involved. We took that first step. That deal made sure. Absolute sense on paper, right? I am as risk adverse as I think anybody can be. And I've been challenged and really trying to loosen up a little bit. And I've made this comment before. I don't do a lot of deals, but the deals I do are home runs, right? So,
yeah.
So if you're out there, you're looking to do your first deal, there's so many avenues you can get advice from, right? And so many people that are talking a big game and talking.
Well, don't try to be a savior for one.
Yeah.
I mean, don't think that, like, man, I mean, it's sometimes that beginning deal, if you're just looking at it like from a risk standpoint, it's like, don't do a deal just to do a deal.
Just to do a deal.
It's not.
Absolutely not. Yeah. It's got to hit your investing criteria, right?
Yep. Yep. And that's what I always try to tell people too, is especially from like a from I can always go back and relate it to the real estate sales world, where when somebody would come in and I'd be like, man, I've got this house that I want to show you. I really, really, really think it fits. It checks all your boxes, right? But at the same time, while I'm sitting here telling you this, you have to understand I don't have to live in it nor pay for it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. I don't have to live in it nor pay for it. So it has to suit you. It has to check your boxes from your perspective. And even though it checks the boxes you told me, you may walk into it and hate the way something's situated. So it's the same deal. Just because somebody says that it's a good deal doesn't, you have to look at it for yourself and make sure that it's something you feel comfortable taking on. And that right now, I think we're going to get into an issue where the forced appreciation is going to be difficult.
Mm.
Like I'm talking about like 12, 14, 16 months down the road. Forced appreciation, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit, I think, going to be a little challenging at one point or another. So,
Yeah, and really, it kind of depends on why you invest. A lot of people, if you're starting out, at least where I started out, you were starting to invest for cash flow, and now I'm around people who are educating me on why you should invest for tax flow. And tax flow is a phrase that I didn't hear about a lot until I don't know, probably about a year ago. It was first brought up, and the lady who's in our mastermind said, here's the deal, Jay, because she asked me to underwrite a deal and look at a deal with her. And I'm like, I personally, I wouldn't invest in this because it doesn't hit my cash flow criteria. She goes, well, we don't invest for cash flow. We invest for tax flow. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, well, my husband, he's a big CEO at a big company. He makes a lot of money. Our CPA has,
yeah,
you guys have to figure out how to lose money. And so they were focused on buying assets that may not cash flow right now, may not cash flow in 2 years, but in 5 years, they could count on some appreciation. And I sat back from that conversation. I was like, all right,
yeah,
you and I are playing the same game, but you have a different rule book. You know what I mean? And so at that point in time, I
yeah,
stopped making market predictions. I stopped trying to figure out or say, hey, this is now is the time to invest. Now is not the time to invest because I was doing all that. I saw a lot of other, influencers doing the same thing, talking about market predictions. It comes down to this: go look for opportunities. You're going to find them in every. We find deals right now. Matter of fact, I'm underwriting a deal that came to us just from our network of folks, and it looks really solid on paper. We'll see if we can come to an agreement with the seller. It's off market, but it's one of those things. It meets our criteria. It's something we want to go after. We got to come to terms with it with the owners, but we're looking at this in the middle of and I'm using air quotes, a recession, right? When interest rates are absolutely the highest that I've ever seen as an investor. So,
yeah.
but we're going to underwrite to that. We're going to underwrite to that, and we're going to say this is what we got to have because we know cash flow is our main priority when we invest. And if we can't come to an agreement, I don't care. I'll go find something else. I'll go find another one. You know what I mean? It's not.
Go move on. Yeah,
Yeah, and we'll just move on. I kick over a lot of stones to find that one deal, but like I said, those deals are typically home runs. I had a one-on-one phone call with a lady last week, and she was frustrated. She's a new investor. She was frustrated. I was like, "Tell me why you're frustrated." She goes, "Well, I made 4 offers in the last 2 months, and none of them were accepted." And I said, "Okay." I said, let me give you a point of reference." I was like, I've made 12 over that same period. None of them stuck, but I don't care
yep,
because when I underwrite a property, I'm going in with my best. What's going to work for me? Here's my best offer that you can have. And like,
yep.
here's an. This is not the opportunity that I was mentioning. The second opportunity that's come to us recently. It's another off market deal. Realtor brought it to me. Asking's 2.1 million. Okay. And I underwrite it
Okay.
and I tell him, I was like, his name's JC. I said, JC, I said, I'm closer to 1 million, man. I don't know where the 2.1 came from. I said, but when I underwrite this, I'm closer to 1 million. He goes, well, send it on. And I really don't want to do that deal
Yep.
because it's a big project,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where I was like, all right, if you think it'll get it done, now we'll see what happens with that. But one of the things that I coach everybody on or tell everybody to do, Look, you spend the time, you underwrite the opportunity to your criteria and what you're looking for. At the end of that, forget about the asking price. Who gives a crap, right? And 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 here
Yeah,
recently,
just put it down and go.
put it down, submit your LOI, and go, and don't think anything else of it. In the last probably 2 years, it's been very difficult for people to do that because the market's so high. And those people who are playing by those other rules, who are investing for tax flow, right, are coming in. Well, they've now kind of run out of money, right? And they've now maybe not necessarily run out of money, but now those interest rates that are starting to go up, they're slowing down a little bit. The market's going to cool off a little bit, and we're going to be able to have a more competitive marketplace, I should say.
Well, and those cap rates were starting to look like a,
Oh yeah, I mean,
they were starting to get smashed down. I mean, and that's why right there the tax flow people is exactly why the cap rates compressed so hard, because these are people that, and it was, I've talked about it many times on this show, and there's also, there for a while there was there was a prospect that cap rates could go negative,
mm-hmm.
and there were still going to be people buying, and there probably was a deal or two done with a negative cap rate. I'm sure some of the more AAA location buildings, new, uh, 4 or 5 story apartments that were situated near a beach or something like, some of that kind of stuff, I'm sure was there. You can't tell me that some of that stuff was overly massively profitable. And so, but those tax flow people were all over because they had to have them.
Yeah.
And the depreciation was going to outpace the depreciation of the physical asset, and the appreciation on 10, 12, 15 years from now, they didn't care.
They didn't care. Yeah.
Was going to outpace what they would lose today.
Exactly. And they had deep enough pockets to float the property for a while, right? So they didn't really care what the property did as far as their cash flow, and those folks are playing by a different set of rules than the person who's trying to get their first deal done. And me, quite frankly, I mean, we're trying to get our next deal done. We're going to have to raise money for it, possibly, depends on how the seller financing comes through. If we can get a 0% down, that would be great. But yeah, those folks are playing by a different set of rules. And I beat myself up for the longest time. I was getting frustrated. I was like, what don't I know that they know? And then it all came together when I started having these conversations and asking folks about, hey, what do you know about tax flow, investing for tax flow? And they're like, oh yeah, that's just a different set of rules. I was like,
Yeah,
absolutely is. Absolutely is. So
it's a high lick. I think it's, and I don't know, tax flow, in my opinion, you have to really, really balance the debt. The debt has to be really spot on. And because again, when you start, especially if you're in a if you're in a variable interest rate environment where you're okay losing a little bit of money, but then 5 years that interest rate goes to reset, man, you can't unload that asset, and you have to do something.
Yeah.
Man, you could get bent pretty quick.
Guys like me and you, yeah.
So,
but the guys that I'm talking about
again,
that have the deep pockets, that they're liquid, or they have the ability to do that, or they bought with 1031 exchange money, so they're paying all cash or something. They don't necessarily care. They may realize that within the first couple of years, they're going to get maybe 2 or 3%. But what they thought about was, man, they looked at what the Fed did, and the Fed printed more money in the last 2 years than ever since they started printing money, or whatever the stat is, right?
Yeah, I forget what the stat was, but you're right.
And so they said there's no way that inflation is not going to happen. So they're willing to accept, okay, I'm going to get maybe a -% return, just making up numbers, for the next couple of years, but I'm going to have the ability to lock in a 3% interest rate on this 100-unit apartment complex, or whatever the numbers are, right, for the next 20-25 years.
Sure.
And that's their runway. That's what they're doing. And maybe they bought with an arm, maybe they didn't. I started seeing 10-year arms and 5, 7, and 10-year arms, where it used to be just 1, 3, and 5, right, for commercial properties. And so they took advantage, or they I don't know to say they gambled, but they kind of saw something that I didn't. And again, they're playing by different rules. And I'm learning the next time the Fed gets excited with their printing press, I know exactly what to do. I feel like I do anyway.
Yeah, and as long as you kind of, again, it's just like your set of standards, and once you have your set of standards, I mean, you pretty well kind of keep that box shored up from all sides. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Don't. And I'm bad about that. I mean, I know I sit here and I say that and I act like I want to preach that a little bit, but even sometimes I find myself drifting outside of, man, you really don't know anything about that stuff. So why don't you stay the hell over here and let's play? You know what I'm saying? You don't know anything about that type of whatever it is, whatever the flavor of the moment is. So why don't you tell us, so you were kind of focused on helping people with their first deal and helping people get that deal across the finish line and whatnot. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your first deal and what challenges presented themselves and how you overcame those?
Yeah. So first deal, first syndication was a 42 unit apartment complex near Mobile, Alabama. Um, I partnered on it with a guy I didn't know. Okay, so I knew him. I met him. We met. Matter of fact, we were talking to. We just happened to talking to a realtor. We both moved to Pensacola, Florida. And we were talking to a realtor, and the realtor had enough, insight about him to say, "Look, I'm talking to this other guy. You guys are saying a lot of the same stuff. I think we need to go have some beers and sit down and talk and see if there's a partnership we can develop there." And we went met a little Mexican restaurant, sat down and have some beers. I'm nervous as hell because I'm introverted. I don't like meeting new people, and I don't know what I don't know about real estate investing. This is many many years ago. And we sat down and we started
Yep.
just looking at properties, and it wasn't 4 months later that we got the 42 unit under contract. Now this was a $700,000 purchase price. um, 42 units, had about 50% occupancy, true tired landlord kind of aspect, right? So the um, the guy who owned it was from out of town, but he would live on the property Monday through Friday because he was the maintenance guy. He was he's in air quotes leasing agent. He was everything, right? He was the guy, but he was in his 70s. He was in his 70s, and he was just tired of it. And so we were able to get it under contract, and we got under contract. I'm putting up $10,000 for earnest money deposit. Eventually, at one point in time, that goes hard because we had trouble raising money. As most first time syndicators do, and trying to sell their product. Hey, this is why this is a good idea. And we put this little package together, and we started talking to people in our local RIA and our local meetup, and just saying, "Hey, we have this deal under contract." And I still use, this was not our intention going into it, but when it happened, I was like, "Okay, this is a strategy that I'm going to use going forward." Um, and so we had this package together, and we went to these couple of these guys in our local RIA and said, "Hey, you guys have done some multifamily stuff before. Will you look at this with us and just tell us like where you see some gaps and just kind of coach us on, hey, is this something that you would do or present to your investors?" And we went and had lunch with them. We went and had some beers with them. There's a trend there that some alcohol was involved to get things start happening. Um, so,
Yeah, it greases the skids a little bit, doesn't it?
but
Keeps things moving forward.
yeah, yeah. But we sat down with them, and after a couple of different times we sat down with them, they finally said, "Okay, look, we'll partner with you guys on it. We'll bring the money. We've got some investors. We're actually about to cash them out of a deal. We need somewhere to park it, and but you guys will be the boots on the ground. This is your deal. Um, we'll just be your aerial support, right?" And so we bought it. The one thing that I still don't like about that deal, now we went full cycle on it. We held it for 3 years. Made a tremendous. Again, it was timing of the market, but not knowing what we didn't know. We provided an over, I think it was a 313% return over those 3 years, so a little bit over 100% annualized. And but here's the kicker: we didn't make a single distribution during those 3 years. It all came at the end of the sale because cash flow was a, I mean, we had a huge uplift with that 50% vacancy, right? And learned a lot of things like, hey, when a unit's vacant for more than 6 months, chances are the city is now going to require you to bring that unit up to today's standards, up to today's codes, right? So what we had underwrote for,
Yep.
hey, it's
Electric and all that stuff, right?
electric, everything, plumbing, electric,
Yeah.
emergency, all that stuff. So where we had underwrote, hey, this property, this unit, it needs flooring, it needs paint, we're good. We can turn the power on. No, it ended up costing us like 7-8 grand per
Mm.
unit to do that. There was one that actually ended up costing us about
How much?
7 or 8 grand per unit.
Wow.
And
Just for like almost stuff that you can't see, right?
oh, it was all stuff you couldn't see. It was all, so these were
Oh
built in the 80s, right? So codes were a little bit different in the 80s. A lot of it had to do with the vent stacking of this property had gas, and so the hot water heater and there was another appliance that was on gas. So per code back in the 80s, you
stove.
could, yeah, it was a furnace. That's what it was. It was the furnace and the hot water heater. Both ventilated out the same stack. Well, that was per code in the 80s, but today you got to have individual stacks. So we're now drilling holes in the roof, figuring out how to vent those out. I mean, it got into a big deal. It got into a real big deal, but uh,
Hmm.
we're probably, and here's some strategies that we came up with and just kind of learned. Is this is in small town area, everybody kind of knows everybody, right? And as we were buying the property and kind of doing our due
Okay.
diligence, we would go to the local restaurants there, right? And we'd sit down, would have a meal here, again, meals and alcohol kind of like, there's a trend developing here.
Like a recurring thing,
Yeah.
right?
And we would ask our waitress, hey, what do you know about this apartment complex over here? Right. And we'd get the kind of behind the scenes, and then we'd go to the checkout register. Hey, thank you. Everything was great. What do you know about this apartment complex over here? And we'd get their idea, of what it was like. And so we kind of got an idea of what was going on in the neighborhood, and what the neighborhood thought of the apartment complex. Well, fast forward 2 months, we're back in there right now. We've purchased it. Now we're going back in there and saying, hey, I don't know if you remember or not. I was in here a couple months ago, and I asked you about the apartment complex. We bought it, and we're putting it under new management. We got a lot of, so we started creating buzz. Now this is a small town, right? So we started creating buzz with that. We actually went in front of the city council, let them know who we were, what we were trying to do, because this was an eyesore for their community. And at the end of our presentation to the city council, the mayor comes over and says, "Hey, we're glad y'all are here. We're excited to see what you're going to do with that property. We have another property we would like for y'all to look at." And so the mayor is trying to get
Okay.
us to buy. It's uh, the worst apartment complex in the city, and it was just run down. And he was like, y'all really should. And so as we start, as we're renovating the property, you always start with the outside first. If there's outside renovations, because that is the signal. That is the Batman signal to everybody who's in the neighborhood. Something's happening. Something's changing.
It's
Right.
coming. It's
They get
coming.
they get to see
Something's
the
going
new
on
paint
here.
going up, and the landscaping happening, the new parking lot that was put down, not just a banner sign out, by the road under new management, or stuff like
Sure.
that. So that really showed them. And then so after we're a few months into the property, and we get another message from the mayor, says, "Hey, I like what y'all are doing. Any chance you guys want to look at that apartment complex over there and take that on?" And we we
Opportunity.
we never did, but it was a nice pat on the back, for us to do that. But we got to
Sure.
know,
Well, it kind of shows you're doing things right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The people are seeing it.
And we got to know, the crime was an issue at this property, and I got to know the sheriff pretty well. And folks who start out in the sheriffing business, being deputies, regardless of their age, when they start out, they don't make a whole lot of money. So we just approached
Yeah.
the sheriff, and said, "Look, you got any young deputies? Maybe single, maybe have a roommate or whatnot, that would be willing? Would you allow them to drive a squad car home? We will comp them rent, right? Like
So
we'll,
you park a cop car outside,
dude.
you're golden.
Our rent, our crime rate went down. He goes, yeah, I know the property. He goes, let me ask
Yes.
around, and we worked it out with him. And it was just about having the. And another thing we did is we put up fake cameras, and this is the best thing ever. They are. And go to Amazon. You get 4 cameras, $50, right? You put them up. You put them about, I don't know, 15 feet high, so nobody sees them. But they're battery operated, right? You get the lithium ion battery on there. So at nighttime, everybody who walks by them can see the little red light that's blinking, and that's the only thing it does. And so we put those up. We put up signs that says property now under video surveillance, smile, you're on camera, all this stuff. And when then we had a deputy car sitting in the parking lot. Dude, our crime rate went down tremendously.
So you clean it up pretty quick. I mean, that's yeah. All of those things are. They used to talk about that. Year when I very first started selling real estate, and they were, I was having some leasing issues with some properties that I had bought, and they were like, man, if you can find one of those deputies, a single deputy that wants to, that even if you give them the rent,
Yeah.
like just say, hey, man, I'm going to give you a place to live.
Yeah.
Just drive your squad car home. That's all I ask.
Yep.
And man, it changed everything.
It was a big game changer. So, yeah, raising money, that's the big thing. If you're listening to this or watching this and you find a deal, you find yourself having a deal under contract, put some sort of package together and just go talk to people and say, look, not with the idea that you're going to sell them on it. You just want the practice of delivering it, right? Say, look, and I'd come to you, Casey. Hey, Casey, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm into apartment investing. I'm trying to close my first deal. I've actually got this property under contract. Would you mind if I take you to lunch, or just can we hop on a Zoom call and let me give you my 30 minutes pitch, right? And just kind of go through this with you. And then at the end of it, you tell me what questions you have, what do you not like about it, how can I improve it, and so to speak. And I think that worked out for us very, very well. It was not our intent, but it worked out very well.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cash Flow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cash Flow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
Sure. All right. So once you got past that and you started looking towards the future, now what I got to ask, geographically, where was that located at?
So that was in Mobile, Alabama. That was about an hour and a half of where I was living, right?
From where you were living. Okay, that's I guess more or less what I was getting at was how far was it, and because obviously you spent some time there, aside of just like being able to just like go home in that same city, it
Right.
was fairly obvious. But I didn't know if it was something you had to fly to or
No,
somewhere you had to.
mm-mm.
So all of that being said, your takeaways from that. Do you still own that asset or no?
No, we went full cycle after owning it for 3 years. Yeah, it was
Okay.
not. We
And
didn't
what
list
was
it on the
what?
market. We did not list it. It was somebody approached us about buying it. We we bought a 16 unit about 13 months ago, and I just had somebody message me asking me if I'd be willing to sell it, and I'm like, yeah, but you're gonna have to bring an all cash
Yeah,
offer
it's
because
all for sale.
yeah, you're not gonna get financing for the price I'm gonna give you.
Probably one of those tax flow people.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a couple of them still left. Where's that asset located at?
That one is not far from Mobile as well. It's up in small town, Atmore. I love small towns, these tertiary markets,
Gotcha.
even smaller than tertiary. I don't even know how
Yeah.
to pronounce the quaduciary or whatever it's called, but I love those markets because that's where I grew up. Number one is in a very small town, and also the big players don't play there. They don't
Sure.
like them. They don't fit their model.
Well, they want the big crowds.
Yeah.
Yeah. They want the big crowds. They want the people. They want the. Now, I bet I hadn't used the word tertiary in my entire life. Probably has never used it until like 3 or 4 months ago when everybody started like all of these because you know a lot of the circles that I run in are medium, small to medium capital raisers. You know, syndicators and that. So nobody that's like a REIT
Right.
level, I guess, if I guess is what I'm getting at. And so once we all started kind of looking at those markets, it was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
there's some pretty damn good returns going on in some of those places because the thing is about those little tertiary markets like that, the people that live there, they want to live there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to leave. They
Yeah.
want to have a nice place to live in that tertiary market, and they're going to rent it.
Yep.
Because rent is really, honestly, man, the way things are going. I mean, it really is. You know, for instance, my father, he's not. I don't know. Maybe he's listening. If he does end up listening, you're old. You're old. So I'm saying you're old. Rip the Band-Aid off and say you're old, right? But the best thing for him at some point is to have a place where he doesn't have a lot of upkeep.
Yep.
Where he gets in, goes, lays down, goes to sleep, gets up, goes, does his thing, goes back, doesn't have to do a lot of, and then, you know, something leaks, something breaks, something happens, you know, he doesn't really necessarily have to worry about it. So, but maybe he won't hear me call him old. I guess I'll play it off some kind of way. I don't know. Pull the Band-Aid off. But anyway, so rent is the way it goes. And those people that want to live in those tertiary markets, that's where they want to live. You know, their kids, their grandkids, kids come home after school, whatever, come home after college or whatever. That's where they want to live. And I see it every day around here, especially. So with all of that being said, where are we headed right now? What does the next, say, 12 months hold for you all?
For us, I mean, we're still making offers, still making, you know, we're focusing in on the markets that we know. You know, somebody asked me this question a couple of weeks ago and said, where are we headed? I'm like, what market are you talking about? Because a lot of times when that question's asked, the assumption is, where are we headed as a nation? And you can't look at the nation and say, this is where we're headed for a real estate market analysis, right? I mean, it's just so different. And I think where we're headed in the markets that we're interested in is the same place as will appreciation slow? Yes. But for a couple of years. I think it's just going to be a couple of years thing. There are some folks that I'm listening to that talk about, you know, a lot of the forced appreciation that happened in the last couple of years. That was remnants of the downturn that happened in 2010. Right. So, you know, you had a lot of contractors that went under. And so the supply and demand really hit its peak, probably with the help of low interest rates, really hit its peak probably, I don't know, 4 months ago, depending on what markets you're looking in. And so I think we're going to have an opportunity to underwrite with higher interest rates, knowing that if we can close some deals at higher interest rates right now, regardless of what we do for rent, if we do rent increases or anything like that, in 24 to 36 months, we're going to be able to refinance with my expectation at a lower rate than what we would be able to close on today. Because I don't think it just the bankers that I've talked to who service the markets that we're in, I feel like they all went to the same conference, because when I talked to them, it's like, hey, where are we headed with interest rates, right? And they all have the same exact. They all have the same exact answer. Well, here's what happened: is the Fed waited too long to do anything to battle inflation. So now they're pushing all the levers up to try to calm inflation down. And just as quickly as they get them up, they're going to realize, oh crap, what did we do? Now we got to start pulling them down. So as fast as the interest rates went up, just as fast as they're going to come
down. I don't
down.
understand that. I never have. I'm like, dude, just, you know, we were all like, you got to understand. I mean, I'm not overly smart by any means. And I'm like, all right, interest is, you know, inflation is on its way up.
Mm-hmm.
It's on its way up. It's on its way up. Hey guys. Hey, inflation, it's coming. Here it is. It's on our back door. And the Fed's like, and then all of a sudden they're like, boom, 3/4 of a point.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? We couldn't have just done that like an eighth at a time, and just instead of just like just I mean maybe that's their goal. Maybe their goal is to just kill it all at one time. Like I don't know. I guess I don't quite understand the macro part of that the equation of saying, hey, well, let's rip it off so that we whatever.
Well, a lot of people, including myself, up to a certain point, I assume the government knows what they're doing, right? And when they do what I would consider something
Ooh,
stupid like that, instead of not just barely creeping up, um, then I'm like, oh, you idiots, what are you doing? You killed the market, right? Depending on where you sit in the
yeah,
market. If you're trying to sell, you definitely feel that way. If you're trying to buy, you're like, oh, thank you for making interest rates go up. Now things are going to become more
maybe
affordable.
that was
But here's what I've learned over the
maybe that was the
years is in watching just the government in general. Do they know what they're doing? Absolutely, they know what they're doing. Do we know why they're doing it? No. We get fed a story. I checked out. I stopped watching the news like 15 years ago, and the world has not come to an end. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things where if you come into our mastermind, our program, you're going to hear me say that over and over and over because I'm planting those seeds. Stop watching the news. Never watch the news. There's nothing but
quit.
fear mongering crap
Absolutely.
that's going to happen.
That's where my father's going to be in his rental house watching Fox News, and I'm
My
like,
parents
really?
too. My parents too. Um,
I'm like, dude. I mean, give me a break.
yeah,
There's more. You're right. The world has not stopped spinning yet,
it hasn't. And
and it's it just is. It's nauseating when he starts, and I'm just like, no, it's not all a big conspiracy. I promise, it's not. Life is going to go on.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ooh,
So,
man.
so I
Anyway,
think there,
all right. Well,
there's
listen.
a reason why they're doing all
Oh,
that.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying there's a reason why they're doing all that, and I have saved
There is.
myself a lot of stress and anxiety trying to figure it out, and figuring out that I could do anything about it. And that's one of the things is okay,
That's
all
right.
right. Well, it's the old saying go. You play the hand that you're dealt, and right now that the government's dealing
Yeah,
this
fix what you
hand,
can and what you can.
and you got to pivot.
That's right. Jay, listen, we're running out of time. And as usual, I have a couple of questions that we ask everybody that comes on the show just to get an idea of who they are. And this can be the answers, there's no right or wrong. But the first question is, what is the best book that you have recently read or are currently reading?
Best book that I've currently read is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
I hadn't heard that one.
It is it's I mean
I don't think I've heard
the guys
that.
from Texas. He tells it like it is, and it I feel like I went to church, and I can't put the book down. It's one of those that I bought on Audible. I've listened to at least 2 or 3 times, and I bought the paperback. It's that good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like every time you do it, you take something different
Yep.
from it. I've had several books like that myself. I'm actually rereading Joe Fairless's book right now about real estate. So it's things I talk about every single day.
Right.
I'm rereading it just to grab maybe a little piece here or there that maybe I missed, and just to make sure that it's all churning in the process, that because honestly there's not a more brilliant book about real estate syndication than that. And so just it's the very basics, it's the streamlined from beginning to end, everything from the thought leadership platform all the way through to signing closing documents and so on. So all right, next question. What is a dream vacation that you have either taken or hope to take?
Dream vacation. So we're kind of on it right now. I don't know. I don't include this as part of my bio, but about 13 months ago, my family and I set out on this nomadic lifestyle. So we've been traveling for the last 13 months.
I'm jealous. I'm so jealous.
And
I'm so jealous. You don't even say another word.
no, it's so we're kind of doing it, and but yeah,
Man.
we've been home 2 months out of the last 13, and yeah, we're exploring new places, we're hitting up a lot of beaches, a lot of different beaches we've never been to, and just it's all about the adventure, man.
Yeah, but man, what a way to go. I mean, I had a guest on here. His name was Derek Clifford. He's been on here a while ago.
Yeah, I
He
know
and I
Derek.
have since became
Yeah.
friends. Well, you do, and he's in a mastermind with me, and so man, that was the first time I had ever heard digital nomad. I was like, what? Excuse me. I was like, because when I think nomad, I think big hairy man with that big back
Shaving
thing
is
that just
optional.
like, "Rawr," like me today. That's what I think about it. But he was telling me, and I was like, oh my gosh, he just wanders the world basically
Yeah.
aimlessly, but with aim of culture and life and living and seeing and doing and taking it in. And it's just, man, it's just it's something that I really, like I said, I think it's badass. So, all right, Jay, listen, if the listeners heard something that resonated with them or something that they want to reach out and learn more about, you had mentioned a mastermind, you had mentioned maybe some coaching, I think, or something along those lines. How can the listeners reach out and get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily do coaching anymore. It's more focused on the mastermind, growing the mastermind. I've got a book on Amazon. It's called Make an Offer. But our landing page for everything, the W2 Capitalist, is W2Capitalist.com. So
Awesome. Man, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And listeners, as always, please head down and leave us a 5-star review if you like today's episode, and also type out a review just so that other people may know what you liked or didn't like about our show. And as always, please smash that subscribe button, because we want to be able to notify you when we release new episodes so that you can come back, learn more, and become the best real estate investor possible. Jay, thank you so much again for your time. And listeners, I want to thank you for your time, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day.
Cashflow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.